Right, I call the Golf Course Commission meeting to order. It is 4:30. This meeting is basically to discuss the complaint filed by Gardner and the response by Dan Bailey, and that's the only issues that will be discussed at this meeting. This meeting will be videotaped and will be posted to the city's YouTube website. We are only going to discuss this complaint and also Dan's response. One person will speak at one time. When you're called to speak, please state your name. And if anyone disrupts this meeting, you'll be asked to leave. So the way that we're going to proceed is I will read the complaint, and I will read Dan's response, and I will ask Gardner and Ann to explain what basically occurred. And I will ask Judy, and is your partner here?
She's not here yet.
To explain what
Will she be able to come in if she gets here late? Okay.
And then I will ask Dan to explain his actions, and I'll ask anyone else in the audience if they want to speak to the matters, and then I'll ask the golf commissioners if they have any questions. So, to the members of the Gardner Golf Commission. Over the past weekend, during the 3-day member tournament, during the scramble format, while playing the first hole, our opponent claimed that my playing partner, Ann violated a rule improving our line play. Our opponents, that included David's mother-in-law, immediately called the pro shop to report the alleged violation. While on the phone with our opponents, Dan, the committee, did not ask to speak to my playing partner, Ann Roy, or me regarding the alleged violation. 5 hours later, upon completion of the round, while syncing our scorecards, my playing partner, Ann Roy, and I were informed by our opponents, not Dan Berry, the committee, that Ann and I were being assessed a 2-stroke penalty. Upon being informed of the 2-stroke penalty, Ann and I asked Dan, the committee, to explain the following. What rule was allegedly violated? How could a rule that is meant for normal stroke play per the USGA be applied in the scramble format? And how could Ann and I be assessed a 2-stroke penalty without hearing our version of the incident? Dan had 5 hours to look up the rule, understand how the rule should be applied in the scramble format versus a normal stroke format. Ann and I asked Dan multiple times what specific rule had been violated. Dan and the committee was either unwilling or unable to provide specifics on the rules that was violated. Finally, after multiple requests for specifics on the rule that was allegedly violated, Dan went into the pro shop and returned a minute later. Upon his return, he stated that Rule 8 had been violated. He did not bring a copy of the USGA rules book, which would have allowed all involved to read and discuss the actual wording of the rule. Upon finally getting Dan to identify the specific rule that was allegedly violated, Ann and I asked Dan, the committee, how a rule that is specific for a normal stroke play, as defined by the USGA, could be applied in a scramble format. Dan and the committee's response was the format does not matter, which is totally incorrect statement and brings into question why Dan should be allowed to act as the committee. Obviously, format matters per the USGA rules are different between stroke and match play, for example. Again, per the USGA rules, interpretations differ between normal competition and scramble format. Upon Dan telling us that the format of the tournament does not matter, I asked that Dan contact the USGA Rules Group, which is available 7 days a week by phone and by email, to seek clarification as to how a rule intended for normal stroke play can be or should be applied in the scramble format. Dan refused to seek guidance from the USGA. That evening, I contacted the USGA Rules Group to seek clarification, and below is the response from the USGA. This is a committee decision to make from the committee running the competition on how they treat line of play in their scramble, given that the ball could be played from where it comes to rest in a normal competition. Again, in normal competition, normal stroke play format, Rule 8 would have applied. in a scramble format in which players are allowed to take a full club length from the spot where the ball lies, the rule is not applicable. The two-stroke penalty should not have been assessed. Dan, the committee incorrect ruling cost my playing partner and I second place, which would have paid each of us $35. Summary points. Dan, the committee had 5 hours to look up the rule and question and be prepared to review the rule and how it should be applied in the scramble format. Dan was neither well versed on the rule and was incapable of explaining how the rule could possibly be applied in the scramble format. Dan, the committee never opened the USGA rule book with the individuals involved. Dan, the committee made the decision to assess Ann and I penalty without even discussing the incident with us. Once it was clear that Dan, the committee, did not understand the difference between normal stroke play and a scramble format, Dan flatly refused to contact the USGA rules group upon request, myself and my playing partner. Dan Barry is not a certified PGA professional. He has history of selectively enforcing rules and making decisions based on parties involved in the incident. I am requesting the city pay Ann and I the money we would have won had Dan applied the rule correctly. Perhaps it's time for the golf course to hire someone that is a PGA professional, versed in the rules of golf and willing to assume the responsibilities of the committee. So Dan's response to the golf course commission is, please let this letter serve as a complaint or correspondence regarding my interactions with Gardner during a recent 3-day member tournament, specific to Saturday, September 17th and Sunday, September 18th. I will be brief in this letter, but do not request a meeting, but do request a meeting. This is a blanket attendance so that the golf commission can hear the full details about her negative and disruptive behavior, loud, profane language, and insults directed towards me. The confrontational nature and actions were witnessed by many members of our golf course. They were completely inappropriate and, in my opinion, warrant severe disciplinary action. Finally, I cordially request that the golf commission address the matter soon so that this issue can be resolved. Thank you for your time. It's okay, Brian, if you want to explain where that
I think the letter pretty much explains it. Ben and I were playing and fixed the pitch mark. It was a pitch mark that had absolutely, by fixing it, warrant no influence at all, no, in our line of play. We hadn't even determined the line of play yet. She fixed the pitch mark, and immediately Judy Walker and Brenda Looney, who were about 25-30 feet away from us and not anywhere near where we were standing on the fringe of the green, claimed that we violated a rule, and were immediately on the phone with Dan, who could have come down, looked at where the pitch mark was, looked at where the ball laid, looked at where we took relief because we were allowed relief because of the format of the thing. He chose to do none of that. Ann and I took our one club length that we were entitled to because of the nature of the tournament and played out the hole. So Ann's action of fixing the pitch mark didn't have any bearing at all on our line of play. Didn't provide us any advantage by her fixing the pitch mark, which the Rule 8 states that it's a penalty in normal stroke play if it improves your line of play, which it did not. Number one. Number two, it wasn't normal stroke play. So, anyways, we finished the round, and when we got up to sync up our scorecards, Judy, when we started going through hole by hole, told us that we were getting a 2-stroke penalty for what had happened. And we asked Dan to explain it, and he was incapable of explaining the rule, identifying the rule, explaining how that type of a rule could be applied in the format that we were in. Said that the format of a golf tournament doesn't impact the rules. And an argument ensued with Brenda Looney screaming at Ian, and tempers, and Ian shot back and told her to stop yelling and screaming at her. And tempers were high, and Dan just did nothing to address the situation or anything. So he, finally went into the pro shop and came out and said, "You guys violated Rule 8," but he didn't bring a rule or anything. Let him sit down, open it up, and say, "Here's the rule. Here's why I think it applies." You said you violated Rule 8. We had already looked up the rule and knew that the rule, we didn't violate the rule because we didn't gain anything from her fixing the pitch mark, because our line of play was nowhere near where the pitch mark was fixed. And we asked Dan again to explain why we were getting this 2-stroke penalty, and he couldn't explain it, couldn't explain, or didn't want to explain why it was applicable in the format that the tournament was. And I asked him to call the USGA, and he absolutely refused to call them. I said they're open by email, by telephone. That's why they're there. The USGA rules people are there. So, call him. He just blatantly refused and said, he made the decisions, and you're getting a 2-stroke penalty, and that's it. He never came over. Before we got in, we were told we were getting a 2-stroke penalty when we arrived at the pro shop by Judy. Dan was already assessing us a 2-stroke penalty without ever even asking me, my playing partner and I, like, what happened? Give me your version of the story. What were you doing? What was the situation? Where was the net or anything like that? Automatically just took, their word for it. Boom, we're getting a penalty. And that's it, because Dan and I made the rules.
You have anything to add? Yeah.
Well, okay, I'll tell you my concern. When we came up to, first of all, Brenda Looney, when I fixed the pitch mark, which was over here, our ball mark was here, no ball was placed yet. I just simply fixed it. And she said, "That's a 2-stroke penalty." And I said, "I'm not putting from there." And I placed the ball over here. If she was going to call a pro shop, that's fine. But I think that we should have had some opportunity to state, I'm a non-confrontational person. I would have liked the opportunity to explain it. When we were done with the round and we came up, I was talking to someone, and I could see this argument starting already. They were sinking the cards, and I wasn't part of that. I was never asked, if I'm the one that supposedly made this infraction, I would think the first thing you do is you talk to one side and you talk to the other side, and if it were me, I would have made sure that I would have given my version. I've been to some rules committee. I was president of the Worcester County Women's Golf Association for a while. And so, not that I know all the rules, and I'm not saying I do, but it just didn't seem correct in this format because we have a club length. I would have liked the opportunity to sit reasonably explain what was going on, and I didn't feel I did. The other thing that happened afterwards is, people say things that I was very concerned because my reputation is important to me, and how people perceive me is important to me. And things were said that were damning to my reputation. And I'm here mostly to set the record straight. I really did not feel as if we infringed upon any rule infraction. And it was hard to come back the next day and not feel pressure from other people looking at us like, you know, we've done something wrong. And that's basically all I want to say.
Okay. Brenda, you want to give your version?
I'd love to give my version. I was 6 feet away from the infraction, not 25, when she reached over and fixed the ball mark in the fringe. I know nothing about penalties. My response was, I don't think you can do that. And then Ann's reply was, well, I was going to putt, but now I won't, I'll chip. And then Brennan, she decided to take a different position within the club lane, chipped, played out the hole. I always call Dan when I have a rule question, and so on the way from the first hole to the second hole, after we all finished the hole and there was no further discussion, I just said, I don't think you can do that. And Dan said, I don't think you can do that, I'll look into it and let you know. There was no further discussion with Dan. When we finished the 9th hole, Dan happened to be outside, and because we were gonna play 17 more holes. So I wanted to know if that really was an infraction, in case we wanted to do it at some other point. And when we got to the 9th hole, I said to Dan, did you figure it out? I don't know what my expression was, and he said that it's a violation no matter whether or not they fixed it and then used that lie to play or whatever. The fact that she fixed the hole was the infraction. And he told us in that case it's a 2-stroke penalty. And I didn't want to feel like I knew that and didn't share it with them. So when we went up to the 10th hole, I said, Dan believes it's a 2-stroke penalty for fixing the ball mark, even though you didn't use that line of play in the end. And that was it. And I will say that there were loud voices, there was screaming and yelling at Dan. I raised my voice to Ann, and when I realized I did, because she said, you're yelling, I said, I'm really sorry, and I walked away because it was getting very ugly. There was a lot of cussing and swearing and degrading of Dan, and I didn't want to be a part of that, so I stepped way back behind the car and had no further discussion. And that's really what happened from my point of view.
Okay. Judy, you want to add anything?
Mostly all that. I stayed right there, and there was a lot of swearing to Dan, a lot of F-bombs. And I just felt it was embarrassing for him. It was embarrassing for our ladies' league, because we're all a part of our ladies' league, and it's the integrity of the Ladies Association. And Ann did explain to Dan what had happened. She'd been down and used the cement and, you know, things like that. And he said,
After the
you know, there was an infraction, so he suggested that I put the 7 on the card and put my initials, because Brennan did walk away with the card. So we were over where he parks the cards. And I said, I have to see the card, and she gave me the card, and I put the 7, I put my initials like he told me, but she didn't let me sign it. She walked away with the card and said she didn't know if she was gonna,
Not me.
no, Brennan,
Right.
if she was gonna play the next day because of what was going on. So I told Dan, I put my initials, and there's no signature because she walked away with the card, and I didn't even know where she went. But it was the way she treated Dan that bothered me the most. And if it's an infraction, it's an infraction. If it's not, it's not. But there was no need to treat Dan the way she did.
Want to give you a version, Dan?
Yeah, like Brenda said, she called me after the first hole, told me what she thought had happened. I looked in the rule book at that point, and like I do sometimes with other rules stuff, I tend to lean on some other people. I did text two of my friends who are PGA professionals and got a response back, confirming response back from one of them, that they thought I was in the same boat, in the right direction as far as the rule goes. I talked to Brenda at the turn, so I think that's a 2-shot penalty. And then when they came off and started comparing scorecards, obviously Judy had a 7 on her scorecard, and Brenda had a 5 on theirs. That's when the discussion started, which quickly escalated into, like you said, argument, swearing, and like I said, it wasn't just one side that was yelling. Trying to get everybody to calm down a little bit. At that point, and I made mention of this, and I don't know how many of the 4 of them heard this, but I definitely told Brenna that I had not assessed any penalty at that point, but that I wanted to hear what happened on both sides. And we probably had a good 5-minute, I'd say, discussion, for lack of a better term, trying to figure out, determining where the ball was, where the ball mark was, where the pitch mark was, and a lot like a lot of things that go on in life, there are 2 stories about where the pitch mark was in comparison to the ball, and it's easy. It was an easy determination for me that that ball mark, no matter who was telling the truth or whether the truth was somewhere in the middle, that it was a reasonable distance from the line of play and shouldn't have been fixed. There's a decision in the rule book that states that you're changing your mind. Now, obviously, the rules don't deal with preferred lies, moving the ball, a club length, and stuff like that. Even if you decide to change your decision on how you're going to play your shot, after you've had to fix the ball mark, it's still a penalty. This the stuff that went through my head from phone call to the end. Granted, it is 5 hours. And depending who the parties are, I'm running all these scenarios through my head within seconds. All right, if this was reversed, what would I do? If this was with 2 other groups, what would I do? If this was with me and another group, how would I feel? That's how I went about this whole thing. I didn't assess the penalty because of who it was against or who it was favored. Since then, since the tournament has ended, I've spoken also with 2 other PGA professionals, including the Director of Competition and Rules for the New England PGA, and he's the one that led me into the book as far as supporting decisions. I still feel very, very confident in that ruling. That was a 2-shot penalty, and that's we can discuss the conduct after. But as far as the ruling goes, I feel very confident in it.
The USGA people that we talked to said that it wasn't a violation because the rule is only applicable to normal stroke play. Mary Harris also sent a letter to a person with Mass Golf who also said the rule was not applicable because the rule is only applicable in normal stroke play when you play the ball as it flies.
Do you have any of that documentation?
The documentation was sent to the Golf Commission. We should have all got a copy of it.
I have if I can ask a question. You have the one section from Tim Holscher there. Is that what you're referencing?
And there's another one too.
There should be another one.
The section from Tim Holscher is a little tough to decipher. He states it's a committee decision. That's all I see being said there.
He said the rule is normally applicable in normal stroke play, so then it's left up to the committee when it's not normal stroke play.
No, it's as where it comes to, as it would normally be applicable, yes, so it's still up to the committee. That's how I read it. But anyway, continue, I'm sorry, I just wanted to, I'm missing some information, I don't know what to see, where the 78 one is.
Mary's email didn't come through. All right. Would you mind if I read it?
Sure.
Okay. Mary Harris, who has worked on a number of rules, et cetera, looked into this. She called a couple of pros, both said, and I'm not going to name names, so both of them said that no, it should have been an infraction. So she continued to research and contacted, I need to find the person's name, Christine is all I can see.
Christine Viator,
Thank you.
who's on the rules for Mass Golf.
Right, right, and she said, I answered your question below, but the short answer is the pro shop got it wrong. I had a lengthy discussion with the top of the rules officials at USGA about this. First, you are not allowed to repair a ball mark or damage to the ground on the fringe if it is where your ball landed. This is covered under Rule 8, we understand that. It does not address the fringe specifically, but the general area of the fringe is. However, that restriction applies only to the lie of the player's ball at rest, the area of the player's ball intended stand, the area of the player's ball intended swing, or the player's line of play. All right? And she says, sounds to me she's right-handed. She was talking about me. And she merely caring for the courses. The mark did not interfere with any of the above restrictions. Therefore, the intended rule is not applicable. So in other words, it's not.
Are we missing the context of what was sent to them? Like,
I don't think, maybe,
So-
No, I don't think so.
If
You'd like me to.
if there was one version sent to them and
If-
do you have the version that was sent to her?
I-
What the question was there?
Listen, all I know is our ball mark was here, the pot mark was here. We played our ball from over here.
How's the question phrased to her when?
Can you fix, I sent Dan an email on the Tuesday after the tournament stating what I read, and what I read was that, this is my email to Dan. Good morning, I'm sending this email to request clarification of the rules of golf and their interpretation. The following is what I read: repairing ball marks. You can repair a ball mark on the green at any time, but you cannot repair a ball mark on the fringe if it is in your line. So, for example, if your ball's on the fringe and you're fancy putting, which of course is putting from the fringe, you can't fix it. You can repair it when it is not in your line or not interfering with your line of play. So that's, then it goes on to say, but if another ball comes and makes a mark in front of your ball, after your ball has come to rest, you can then fix that as well, But that's what I read. And unfortunately, Dan never responded to my email, so I didn't get clarification on that.
if I can ask Dan, it's my understanding that explanation that I've heard of the rule that they're applying is the rule you apply,
Yes.
because it's the reasonable line of play, correct?
Yeah.
So the question comes down to what was in the reasonable line of play.
And so
We are
there's
not
no-
overridden, okay.
It was not in the line of.
Yes.
We have two different stories with that, that's
Well,
the problem.
I can't
It's
imagine.
only a reasonable line of play in normal stroke play. You play the ball down, if she were to fix the ball mark, the ball is here, normal stroke play, you're playing the ball down, the pitch mark is here, her intended line, which is what the rule says, if it had been in the intended line,
Mhm.
if by her fixing the ball
It's more
mark,
of a
it
fair,
also
rather than fair.
Right.
it also improved, not if you're playing the ball down, if her
You
intended
could-
line of play.
That, we're working under the assumption that you always hit the ball exactly where you want to hit it, so it's just reasonably within the play, which, again, is the question we're at.
Well-
I understand your point, don't get me wrong, and you do not believe it was in your reasonable line of play.
Of course not. It
I-
was
Don't
not,
get me wrong. I
it was
understand.
not anywhere
However,
near our line of play.
We weren't there.
If it improves her line of play,
I
which it
can't-
wouldn't have, I don't think, even if we were playing the ball from the exact spot.
Sure.
Okay,
But the question revolves around right here, that you're asking us to make a determination on something we weren't there for.
we understand that.
And there seems to be two different stories of
Well,
whether we're.
I can't imagine that the team we were playing with, the other team that we were playing with, could deny that the mark was, the the pitch mark was here, that I fixed it. Our ball mark was here. They cannot deny that I didn't play it from there and that I played the ball from over here.
I'm not
They-
denying.
Well, I didn't deny that. I said,
Said-
she said she was gonna putt and now I will not putt.
I said,
And
I'm
that's
not
when they
going to
moved it
putt.
away from the line of play. And my understanding of the rule is that you cannot fix a mark on the fringe until you've played beyond it.
The ruling itself, I guess is kind of hogging the time here, but is not our purview. It's the rules committee. If it was something completely erroneous, at least in my opinion, then maybe we could take some action. But
That's right.
the rule that Dan made a decision based on the facts given to him that it was in a reasonable distance of the line of play. That's what he stated. I know some are saying no, some are saying yes, but it's a very, I can't see how we, it's not our role to make a rules decision on the USG rules of golf as a golf commission.
I agree with that.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
And don't get me wrong, I know you mentioned your reputation, don't get me wrong. I do not think you had the intent to violate a rule and.
Nor did I
Yes.
lie about what I said afterward, as some people have stated.
That, I believe your intent was to play as you felt appropriate, that you were able to do within the rules of golf.
Right.
Do not get me wrong, that I'm saying something different than that. However, that's at least my personal feeling. This so far, I don't know if there really was no one else there to witness it. I don't know if anyone has any more questions that may.
I think one of the problems that should have taken place, if there was a question, we were on the first level as well, with the alleged violation, which wasn't a violation, that certainly could be and certainly could have and should have, for that type of alleged violation, left the pro shop, come down, looked at, here's the ball, here's what we did, and could have made a much more informed, educated decision had he taken upon himself to come out and assess the conditions, where the pitch mark was and what we did.
We had already left the first hole.
No, we hadn't.
When I called him, yes,
I have
we
no
had.
idea. I don't know when they called.
I called him
Right.
at the top of the hill, is when
Right.
I got a hold of him.
In the car, we did not
So-
call him in front of the green.
The practicality of doing that, I'm not sure, it's possible, maybe, but.
That's what the USGA says, it's a normal course when there's a question about that.
I understand that's, in a perfect world, that's what we would love to
It
do,
was the
because then we can get the
first
ruling
hole.
there.
It wasn't like it was on the 13th hole where it would take, a while to drive out to that, we were playing the first hole.
Understand that my calling, the intent of my call was to learn the rule for myself. I wasn't trying to assess a penalty. I never said those words. I said, I don't think you can do that. And I will tell you, I'm a member of the Worcester County Golf Association. If I'm on a course there and I have a question about a rule, I call the pro. That's what I normally do, because I want to know what the real rule is.
I don't think anybody's questioning your right or anybody's right to raise a concern about a potential rule violation. If you see one, you were well within your right to say, well, I'm not sure you can do that. Nobody's questioning that, Brenda. What we're questioning is the way that was handled by the pro shop, by not ever getting in and I together and asking us when we came in. He was aware that a potential rule violation was called in by Brenda. And he should have, I think, called, when our group finished, brought Brenda and Judy over and asked them to go over it. And then had Ann and I, give our points. Should have had the rule book open, because he had 5 hours to look it up, and sat down with all of us and said, okay, I've heard from her, from these two, I've heard from these two, here's what the rule book says, this is how I'm gonna make my ruling. Is that probably, if that had probably taken place, it probably would have eliminated a lot of stuff. But he didn't do that. We came in, we were adding up our scores, Judy and I started syncing up our scores and said, Dan said you're getting a 2-stroke penalty, so you got a 7 instead of a 5. And that's when, you know, that's the first time we said, Dan, why are we getting a penalty? What rule did we really violate? Explain it to us. And his inability or unwillingness to explain it, you know, be unprepared to explain it and stuff, you know, then, you know, some arguments started, yes, I swore and I apologize to you, Dan, for that. But I think the situation got out of hand quickly. I don't think the situation was handled the way it should have been handled by Dan, again, acting in the form of the committee.
And did you not bend over on the cement and explain to Dan how it was?
Only after, yes, I did,
Yes,
but wait a minute.
you had walked on the other side from him.
Go ahead.
But I wasn't asked initially. The whole conversation had gone on. I'm sure Dan will attest to this. They'd already made the decision. A lot of conversation had happened prior to this. That's when I said, but this is where our ball was, this is where the mark was, this is where we played from. And Dan said, as I recall, to the best of my ability, it doesn't matter what the format is, it's an infraction of the rule. I never raised my voice, I never got angry. I still thought I was in the right. Am I right?
Oh, you weren't angry,
Okay.
yeah, you were yelling, oh.
But it was well after it had escalated beyond, you know, where it should have been.
My question is, when you played the ball, was that the original spot of the ball?
No.
Is that where it landed, or was that after you took
The
it?
ball
It won.
mark was here. The pitch mark was here. We had a club length
Right, but where was the original spot of the ball?
right here.
Right there.
Right. Pitch mark was here. If I'm putting or if I'm chipping, Ann would have been where the hole is, just the other, it's not like I'm like going this way or that way.
I'm just trying to get an understanding.
I placed the ball over here. So it didn't infringe in our play. It didn't come into the line of play at all. Now they say,
So then why did you move the ball?
What?
I know you had the right to do it, but
Why did I move the ball? First of all, when I first started learning to play golf, the first thing people told me was, you know, these are etiquette things, and please make sure you fix your ball marks, you know, on the green, fix the course. I hadn't decided what to do, although they think I already had. I hadn't decided. I had my wedge in my hand and my putter. I saw the mark, I fixed it. It's more like just caring for the course.
Yeah.
Brenda said, I think that's an infraction. I said, and I'm not putting from there. I plan to play it over here. She's, you know, I didn't have my putter in my hand, so I'm not sure. I mean, again, it's semantics. It
Yeah.
might be a question.
Just like any player that's playing in a format where you get a club line, your ball's laying there, you look, if I come over here, club length, maybe I'm playing less break, more break, uphill, down.
No, I understand.
That's.
I'm just trying to get an understanding
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
original ball was.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm trying to get an
Yeah.
understanding. So, okay.
And then afterwards, after that all transpired, Ann said, well, I'm gonna move over here anyway, I'm gonna take my club length or whatever. And she said, and we'll check. And
We'll check.
you said,
When
we'll
I said,
check.
I don't think you can do that, I didn't say it was an infraction, I said, I don't think you can do that.
And you said, I'll move over here and we'll check. So it just happened that Brenda checked.
I did not say that. Well, to my recollection, I didn't say that, but,
Yeah, I
You know.
don't remember you saying that, I think I just told you to just,
yeah,
you
you
know,
said, just
ignore the
don't worry
noise
about
and
it.
play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. again. I mean, it's been 2 weeks now, and I'm really tired of the whole thing.
I'm sure it always is sharp in everyone's mind at this point as well.
Does the commissioners have any other questions? Anyone else in the room that would like to speak about the matter? You have the right. That's your.
I'm just speaking about the infraction matter.
About, whether Dan's response or Ann's complaint. To speak to either issue.
I haven't gone on mine yet, so.
What's that?
I haven't kind of gone into detail on mine yet.
So why don't you continue?
Okay. So,
I thought you had finished.
no, I'm sorry, with the discrepancy of the scorecards, volumes got up immediately right then before, I said something immediately to Brenna that I hadn't made a decision to do anything yet, and that we can figure this out. And I won't say Brenna was the only one yelling, because Brenda Looney was elevating her voice too, and tried to get everybody to, and Brenda Looney did immediately apologize for yelling. But Brenda's conduct and volume was loud. She used a lot of profanity, a lot of insults directed at me that I am not a real professional or not a full professional, nothing more than a bookkeeper. And I take great, I have a good problem with in her email that she asked me to call the USGA. She demanded that I call the USGA, and that she was not going to turn her scorecard in until I did. To the point I said, I'm not calling USGA at 5 o'clock, and she drove off. I think another group came in, again, this is details that have been 3 weeks down the road now. Another group came in, I posted their scorecards. I did not post Judy and Brenda's yet at that point. Went back in the shop, and Brenda came back and had her scorecard, and the continuation in the volume and the language continued, at which point I stopped her, and I told her she had two choices: to sign her scorecard with the penalty, the 2-shot penalty, to continue to be involved in the tournament, or to not turn the scorecard in and be disqualified from the tournament for not turning in the scorecard. At what point she signed her scorecard, slammed it on the bench, and left. At that point, I needed to chase Judy down to then sign her scorecard, sign the scorecard, so it would have the 2 signatures on it. That was pretty much it for Saturday. I did mention Sunday a little bit when it was, Sunday was smooth. The ladies were out first, I believe, and I did notice that the ladies were kind of getting a little bit of a gap out in the back nine. So I believe Judy's group was out first, and then Brenna's group was second and was falling behind. And I believe it was Kim and Jane that were in that group as well. So as they left the 14th tee, I spoke to Kim and Jane in the cart, and I said, there's a gap, can you please try to close it up? And then Ann and Brenna approached me, and Brenna was walking and Ann was riding. I said, can you guys please try to close up the gap? It's no threat of penalty or anything like that. Ann said, thank you, it's fine. And Brenna asked quite, kind of snapped at me and said, how are we supposed to keep up with them when we need to putt everything out and they can pick the ball up? At which point I just asked her to repeat, and I just said, Brenna, I'm just asking you to close up the gap. I then went to the third group, which was Mary Harris's group, who was behind Brenna's group, and I told them the same thing. I said, you guys, you're falling behind, can you please close up the gap? And I will tell you right now, everybody did a great job doing so. But as Brenna left, she kind of gave me a disgusted wave, and on she went. That was the end of it. After I posted their score on Sunday, I could hear the muttering, that their score was 2 shots too high. I certainly didn't engage that. I got all four groups in, scored it, and went up and made the announcements, and moved on, and went and did the medal. But the treatment I got was well over the line from anything I've ever experienced, whether it's a ruling or not. As far as rulings go, I've never had anybody, more than kind of turn away from me in disgust after assessing a penalty. So certainly it's not the first penalty that I've been involved in, and it won't be the last. It's certainly not the last time I won't rely on my friends that are PGA professionals that know the rules. They know the rules probably better than I do. Now, I'm not gonna be able to memorize the whole book, but I do know how to use the rule book and find what I need to find on it. But yeah, that's my problem with the whole situation. You know, I'm not looking for, you know, I don't need everybody to support me in assessing that penalty. You know, there are people here today that are here because of how I was treated. You know, not necessarily here to support the penalty assessment. A lot of witnesses that saw how I was treated, and you know, and hopefully, I hope I did the golf course proud by not reacting to it and just kind of going with it. So that's pretty much what I have on that.
I'd like to say something, please. I have the utmost respect for Dan's professionalism. My son is a PGA professional. He has the utmost respect for Dan. He looks up to Dan. PGA Pro or not PGA Pro, it's just a label. It has nothing to do with your performance, your professionalism. The rules are extremely nuanced. Dan was not present. He had to listen to 2 different versions. I don't believe he should have ran down there. I know how busy a PGA professional is on a day of a tournament. They can't be running around at the whim of everybody. You know, they should be able to rely on, you know, how it was described. But I think we spent a lot of time talking about this version and the rules and this and that. I don't think that's the issue here. I think the issue is Brenda's response, and I think it was childish and just, there was no, I just think that she shouldn't have responded that way and treated Dan like that. And that's really the real issue here, I think, in my mind.
Anyone else? Just for the record, can you recognize your name?
Oh, just Jack.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? I don't know any of you. I know Ian. I don't know who I'm talking to.
My name is Jeff Burnett. I'm the chairman.
Thank you.
Dave Noyce, Alec Darnellowitz.
Mike Budwick.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Anyone else?
I'll speak up. I'm Margaret Gillette, just for the record.
Yep.
And again, I can't speak to the rule at all.
Nope.
I'm a social golfer. I would not have known that rule. I would have had to ask someone else about it. And I know in our match during that weekend, there was one incident where we did talk to our playing partners about the question. So, I mean, that's how I play golf. What I did see when we came up on the 18th hole was that there was clearly an altercation going on. It was loud, it was, emotional. Ian was sitting in her cart by the time we got there, so I don't know what had transpired prior to that. Brandon was interfacing with Dan. Dan was not engaging. We finished again on Sunday, and I saw the same thing kind of happen again at the scoreboard. So something else got said between Dan and Brenda at the scoreboard on Sunday too. So I don't know whether it was still kind of the hard stop of, we were assessed this 2-stroke penalty and it hurt us. That could have been it. And I get that emotional ran high, but I did witness that interaction on both days.
Anyone else?
Karen Deneen, I was Margaret's playing partner, and we were the group that was coming up to the 18th hole when the altercation was taking place at the scoring board. And I agree with everything that Margaret just said with her version. The one thing I want to underscore was Dan's response. I don't know how he did it, but he was incredibly professional, calm, and I think that if he had handled the situation any other way, he could have gotten out of control. But to his credit, he was just very, very professional.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just want to say, no one's used this word, but I think what a lot of us are feeling is the disrespect that Brenna showed for Dan. We all respect Dan and his decisions and how he runs things, and she was very demeaning. I did raise my voice at the end, and when I realized I did it, I walked away. I apologized later as well. Brenna just kept going and going and going. And using vulgarity very often in front of most of these people who are here today to say, we saw all this and we are not happy with the way Dan was treated. I mean, that's basically why I'm here. This version of the way the ball was and whatever else is long gone, but it was a disrespect that was showed Dan that really hurt our association and our golf course, I think.
Anyone else?
Yes, Anne LeBlanc. We were nowhere near, we were like the last group, so we didn't hear any of the commotion, but we heard about it after. And I don't think anybody should treat another person the way that Dan was treated that day. But again, we didn't hear any of it, we hearsay, but, you've got to respect people in authority or whatever.
Great. Anyone else? All right. So, Brenner is looking to request that the committee give her and Ann 35, is it 35 each? 35 each?
Yeah.
Whatever.
How much did you get?
The third,
What's the difference between second and third, right?
The second.
no, it would have been third, it would have been third place.
Oh.
I don't remember off the top of my head what that.
Third place, did he?
I think it was second.
Second Lynette,
Oh, I got you. Okay.
and I have no idea what it was.
That was the last place that paid out, right?
Right.
We can find it. So is the commission, what's the feeling of the commission? Are they ready to rule on whether or not we should reimburse Brenner and Ann for the difference? Do you want to think about it and table it to our next meeting? It's up to you guys.
I mean, I make a motion that we do not reimburse any money in rules. This is my motion. If anyone would second it.
You have a second?
I second that.
Any further discussion?
As stated, sorry.
Go ahead.
On the motion that, again, not to the credibility of anyone, the rules committee made a decision. That was a decision. We're not in a position to change a decision of the rules committee. It's a terrible precedent to start doing something like that.
I agree with that, and furthermore, if we don't have the power to do that, and I believe we do not, then I don't see why we should reimburse any money that they would have incurred if the infraction had not occurred.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, the second item is whether or not to take disciplinary action against Brenner for her behavior. So, what's the feeling of the committee?
I don't know if there's any precedent, but I, for one, have seen numerous examples of misbehavior, and I think the longer we go without addressing something, the worse it's going to get. I don't know what's behind it all, and it's not just at the golf course either, but I think something needs to be done to address behavior-related issues, whether that's a written warning or what, I do not know, but I think something needs to be done to address that kind of behavior and use of language among ladies and gentlemen, shall we say.
Sometimes the
This
case.
is just wrong.
Can I ask a question? Do you have a code of conduct in place? I mean, I know we did for Worcester County Women's Golf Association, we had a code of conduct.
My point is leading to that. We do have some policies here, which in, not that we're discussing it here tonight, that one Brenda pointed to at one point, discussing that, its existence. It's stated, I don't know if it's useful in a lot of ways for something like this. As Dave stated, that there are other infractions that happened up there that sometimes are looked the other way. My feeling is it's on this golf commission to look at these policies in general, reassess the policies of disciplinary actions in certain situations, come up with a clear set of rules of how it should be addressed, whether it's a warning, when it can be a warning, etc. Put those forth for the next golf season. This is not to belittle the actions taken for swearing the conduct to Dan, whether the ruling was correct or not what we're here to decide at this point. My feelings, if those new policies, how I would write them, were in place, there would be some kind of reprimand. That being said, we need to do it even-handedly, and my motion is to not incur any disciplinary action at this time, with the thought going forward that anything in the future is going to be addressed and addressed severely.
Do we have a second to that motion?
I second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you, everyone. We just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Second. Thanks. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, didn't get yours.